I had just settled in for the perfect quiet evening, beer in one hand, PS5 controller in the other, ready to utterly destroy my virtual enemies, when the doorbell rang. I sighed, already annoyed. It was too late for delivery and too early for a break-in, so I decided it was either a neighbor or some new form of suffering. It turned out to be the latter. Standing at the door was Monica, looking like she had just stepped out of a Hallmark movie about saving souls. I blinked. You're not the pizza I didn't order." She ignored the joke and smiled at me with a small, probably rehearsed smile. "Travis?" I sighed. "Monica, it's late. If you're not here to confess to another terrible decision, I don't know why you're here." "Can I come in?" she asked quickly, her voice soft and hopeful. I stared at her for a long time, not expressing my thoughts. "Only if you brought the pizza I still didn't order." She exhaled in a trembling voice. "Please, Travis." "Just 5 minutes." I considered my options. Option A, slam the door in her face, finish the game, and not think about it anymore. Option B, let her in, listen to all her nonsense, and immediately regret my decision. Because I'm an idiot, I chose option B. "Fine," I muttered, "but if this turns into a take-me-back speech, I'm going to start charging you for my time." She came in, looking around as if she expected everything to be the same. But there was nothing left of her in this house. I crossed my arms. "Okay, you have 5 minutes. Impress me." She took a deep breath as if preparing for a TED Talk. "Travis, I want you to know how sorry I am." I sighed. "Oh, wow. You're sorry? Well, that changes everything. Let me go get the marriage repair kit from the back room and we can just—" "Travis." I smiled. Sorry. Go on with your tragic monologue." She swallowed. "I miss you. I miss our family. And I would give anything, to take back what I did." I looked at her, then slowly shook my head. "You know what I miss, Monica? I miss a wife who didn't go to the gym for reasons that had nothing to do with fitness." She flinched. I was lost." I snorted. "Lost? Monica, even Google Maps can't fix what you've done." She wiped her eyes. "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I tilted my head, pretending to think. Let's see. Could I forgive my wife for cheating on me with a protein shake?" Monica sniffed. "No." She blinked. "That's it? Just no?" I shrugged. "Would you have preferred a PowerPoint presentation?" She looked genuinely crushed, as if she thought her appearance and sad expression would magically change reality. "I just had to try," she whispered. I sighed and pointed to the door. "Now you can try leaving." She hesitated, as if she wanted to say something else. Then, realizing that this was really the end, she gave me one last look, full of regret, defeat, and about 6 months of missed opportunities. Then she left. I closed the door, locked it, and exhaled. Then I went back to the couch, picked up the remote, and muttered, "Well, that was a terrible 5 minutes." And with that, I went back to something more productive, like winning a video game. 2 weeks before the divorce hearing. Francis had always been a well-adjusted kid who saw both sides of the coin and tried to find common ground where everyone else just wanted to pick a side and stick with it. So when he texted me that he wanted to talk, with me, Monica, Beth, and Tracy all in the same room, I already knew where this was going. I sighed as I looked at the message and wondered how much energy I had left for this nonsense. Then another message appeared. "Dad, just hear me out. We don't have to forgive her. I just think we should at least try to talk before the hearing." I ran my hand over my face. This kid. He always wanted the best, but I wasn't sure he understood how tired Beth and Tracy were of their mother. Nevertheless, against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was exhaustion. Or maybe I just wanted Francis to finally see what I already knew. Monica wasn't a victim here. We met at a neutral location, a restaurant in the city center, public enough that no one would make a scene, but quiet enough that we could talk. I arrived first, sat down, and ordered coffee. Bess and Tracy arrived next, both looking as unenthusiastic as I was. "You know this is a waste of time, right?" Tracy muttered, crossing her arms as she sat down. Bess nodded. "Yeah, I don't even know why we're here." "Because Francis asked us to," I said, sipping my coffee. "And because we want him to see for himself that it's pointless." Before they could reply, Francis walked in, followed by Monica. She looked nervous, maybe even hopeful. She sat down across from me, glancing at Tracy and Beth, who immediately turned away. "Thank you for coming," Francis said, already adopting a conciliatory tone. I know things have been bad, but before we go to court, I think we should at least try to clear the air." Monica seized the moment. "I agree," she said quickly, looking at them. I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you." Her gaze lingered on Beth and Tracy. "But I don't want it to end like this. You're my children, and You have no right to say that," Tracy interrupted, her voice sharp as a knife. "You have no right to call us your children when you abandoned us the moment you betrayed us." Monica flinched. "Tracy!" "No!" Tracy clenched her hands into fists. "You want to sit here and pretend that you care? That you were some kind of helpless victim in all of this? You weren't. You made a choice. And now you want us to just pretend that nothing happened?" Beth, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Why now?" she asked in a quiet but firm voice. "Why are you suddenly interested?" Monica opened her mouth but didn't say a word. "Because you're losing everything," I said in an even voice. "That's why." She turned to me, her eyes filling with tears. "Travis, please." "No." I shook my head. "That's why this meeting is a waste of time." I pointed to Beth and Tracy. "They won't forgive you just because you've suddenly decided you're ready to be their mom again. You can't choose when to care about someone." Francis sighed. "Come on, Dad, we can at least—" "No, Francis, we can't." Tracy stood up. "You wanted to talk? Here's what I want to say. I'm done with her." She looked at Monica coldly and decisively. "And if you have any self-respect left, stop pretending that things can be fixed." Beth nodded and stood up too. "I'm done too." I pushed my chair back and stood up with them. Francis looked at us, defeated. "Is that it?" "That's it," Tracy said, grabbing her coat. "Let's go." Beth followed her, and I patted Francis lightly on the shoulder. "I know you meant well, son. But this would never have worked." Monica sat silently, staring at the table. Francis sighed. I don't know. I thought maybe—" "You're a good guy," I said. "But you need to stop expecting good things from bad people." Then, without saying another word, I left the room, leaving Monica and Francis behind. A week before the divorce hearing. Sitting in my lawyer's office, I was mentally preparing myself for an incredibly grueling conversation about the divorce hearing. I had endured months of psychological warfare, survived therapy with a biased arbitrator, and somehow managed not to commit a crime, even though Monica had crossed every possible legal and emotional boundary. But now it was time for the final stage. "So," began my lawyer, a serious man named James Pearson, leafing through a ridiculously thick folder, "the hearing is in a week. We need to discuss what to expect." I sighed. "Let me guess. Monica will walk into the courtroom looking tragically vulnerable, claim she was manipulated into agreeing to the original settlement, and try to squeeze every last penny out of me?" James gave me a meaningful look. "Pretty much," I groaned and leaned back in my chair. Great. Do I get extra points if she pretends to cry, or do I automatically lose the round? James grinned. You won't lose if you don't dramatize. Stick to the facts. That's what the judge will be interested in. I nodded. Okay. So no rolling my eyes when she starts her monologue about how hard it's been for her? Right. What if she starts quoting poems about lost love? James blinked. That's likely? I snorted. You don't know Monica. I bet she'll give a dramatic speech about how I dumped her, and then she'll ask for reconciliation with tears in her eyes. James flipped a page in his notes. Well, she also claims she was emotionally coerced into signing the original agreement and that she deserves alimony. I almost choked on my coffee. Sorry, she what? Yes. James exhaled. She claims she wasn't in a stable emotional state when she agreed to waive alimony. I stared at him. Was that before or after she became emotionally stable enough to cheat on me? I think that's an important point to clarify. James grinned. Keep that tone up in court, and you'll be fine. I ran my hand through my hair, already exhausted by the thought of listening to Monica try to squeeze more money out of me. Okay, I sighed. What else should I expect? James scanned his notes. She may mention your hostile attitude in therapy. Will probably argue that you weren't ready for reconciliation. I laughed out loud. Oh, you mean the therapy where Willow tried to use Jedi tricks to convince me that the divorce was my fault? I shook my head. Great. I can't wait to hear that testimony. James shrugged. It won't carry any weight unless Monica can prove that you categorically refuse to participate. James, I left therapy because Willow was projecting her own marital problems onto me. If anything, I should be compensated for emotional distress. James sighed, clearly trying not to laugh. Unfortunately, the court isn't going to award you compensation for attending bad therapy. I groaned. That's so unfair. Can we at least argue that she should compensate me for the emotional damage from those sessions? Focus, Travis. I waved my hand. Okay. What else? James turned to the last page. We'll discuss financial matters, child custody, although Beth is old enough to make her own decisions, and finalize the division of property. Just stick to the facts, avoid sarcastic remarks, and let me deal with any nonsense she tries to pull. I nodded and sighed. Okay. So basically, shut up, don't roll my eyes, and don't point out how stupid she is too obviously. Exactly. I stood up and shook his hand. I feel like when this is all over, I should get a trophy or something. James smiled. You'll get your freedom. I exhaled dramatically. Yes, but do I get the cake too? James laughed. I'll see what I can do. I left his office, mentally preparing myself for what lay ahead. One more week. Then it would all be over. The day before the divorce hearing. I twirled my glass, watching the ice melt into what I could only assume was liquid wisdom. Tomorrow was an important day. The final battle. The moment when I would either walk away free or find myself financially ruined. Tonight I wanted to be in only one place, but Maggie had beaten me to it and was already sitting at our usual table with a glass in her hand, looking at me as if she could see the storm raging in my head. Well, she said, raising an eyebrow as I sat down. Are you ready? I exhaled. For court? Absolutely not. For a drink to temporarily forget about court? Absolutely. Maggie smiled and clinked glasses with me. That's the spirit. I took a sip and sighed. You know, when I got married, I never thought my life would end up in court, with a judge deciding whether I owe Monica anything. Maggie looked at me with understanding. You're still hung up on that, aren't you? I shrugged. I'm not obsessed. I'm just thinking. I've spent the last few months angry, sarcastic, exhausted. But now that it's almost over, I just feel strangely empty." She nodded. "Because it was your fight. You spent months fighting your way through this mess, taking blows, dodging Monica's madness, going through therapy sessions designed to break you. And now? Now there's nothing to fight for." I smiled. Pretty deep for a woman who once punched me in the face to bring me back to reality. Maggie smiled. "Hey, sometimes tough love requires a little violence." I laughed, but her words stuck with me. She was right. I had defined my life as surviving this divorce, getting out of it with my sanity intact. Now that that was happening, I didn't know what came next. Maggie must have read something in my expression because she leaned forward, resting her hands on the table. "So, what are you going to do when this is all over?" I tilted my head. "You mean after I spend a week in bed rethinking every life decision that led me here?" She smiled. "Yes, after that." I sighed. "I don't know. I've spent so long looking back, trying to rewrite the past in my head, wondering where I went wrong. Maybe it's time to finally look forward." Maggie raised her glass. "To the future." I clinked glasses with her and smiled. To not looking back. And for the first time in a long time, I really meant it. Divorce hearing day. War in the courtroom. I always imagined that my final battle with Monica would be dramatic, worthy of a movie, with lightning, thunder, and maybe a choir singing in the background. Instead, it was just me, my lawyer, an uncomfortable suit I hated, and an old judge who looked like he wanted to be anywhere but there. "All rise," the bailiff announced as the judge entered. I stood up, adjusting my tie as if it were a noose. Across from me, Monica was already playing the role of the tragic ex-wife, sitting with her hands neatly folded, looking fragile and wounded, as if she were about to recite Shakespeare's soliloquy on betrayal. "Sit down," said the judge, already sounding bored. My lawyer, James, leaned over to me. "Remember, stick to the facts, no sarcasm, don't roll your eyes, and for God's sake, don't rise to her provocations." I nodded. Okay. What about deep, dramatic sighs?" James exhaled, pinching his nose. "Just try to act normal." The judge cleared his throat and turned to Monica's lawyer, a guy who, judging by the look of it, practiced smiling flatteringly in front of the mirror every morning. "Counsel, you may begin." Monica's lawyer stood up, buttoning his overly expensive suit. "Your Honor, before we begin, I would like to introduce evidence into the case. The official report by Dr. Willow Carr on the therapy sessions between my client and Mr. Parker." I froze. Oh no. This had to be a joke. James muttered, "Unbelievable," but kept a straight face as Monica's lawyer handed the judge a thick folder of documents. The judge leafed through it, adjusting his glasses. "Dr. Carr is a licensed therapist, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Monica's lawyer replied, "and her findings are very telling." I already knew what the report said. It portrayed me as cruel, aggressive, emotionally unprepared for reconciliation. Because, I didn't sit there and cry on cue like Monica did. The judge nodded slowly. "All right. Continue with your questioning of the witness." Monica's lawyer turned to her. "Mrs. Parker, can you tell us why you thought reconciliation was possible?" Monica sniffed for effect. "Because I still love him," she said quietly. I almost choked on my own anger. She continued as if on cue. "I know I made mistakes. I deeply regret them. But I wanted to go to therapy because I believed that deep down, Travis still loved me too." Monica's lawyer nodded. "And how did Mr. Parker behave during therapy?" She sighed as if I had personally wounded her soul. Detached, sarcastic, abusive. She looked at the judge with teary eyes. "I tried to save our marriage, but he just couldn't let go of his anger." I clenched my fists under the table. Unbelievable. Monica's lawyer nodded. flipping through Willow's report as if it were the gospel. According to Dr. Carr, Mr. Parker displayed clear hostility during sessions, refusing to engage in constructive communication. Instead of dealing with his emotions, he often resorted to sarcasm and evasive answers. I nudged James. That's not sarcasm or evasiveness. That's me coping. James whispered back. Yeah, judges love to hear about sarcasm as a coping mechanism. Just shut up for now. Monica continued her presentation. I wanted to rebuild trust. I wanted us to find a way back to each other. But Travis, he completely shut me out. I looked at her, completely stunned. This woman had rewritten history so thoroughly that I almost expected her to say I'd had an affair with Rick. Monica's lawyer sighed dramatically and turned to her. Mrs. Parker, in your opinion, is your husband a bad person? She nodded without hesitation. Yes, he's very bad. I couldn't help but smile. Monica's lawyer turned to the judge. Your Honor, based on Dr. Carr's professional assessment and Mrs. Parker's testimony, we believe that Mr. Parker's hostility during therapy is clear evidence that he was not emotionally ready for honest negotiations in this divorce proceeding. We request that the original agreement be revised and that my client be awarded alimony. James sighed, rubbing his temples. I leaned toward him. Can I roll my eyes? James adjusted his tie and smiled slowly at me. No, but you can watch me tear it up. He stood up. The battle in court, Monica's cross-examination. I leaned back in my chair and watched James stand up, adjusting his tie with such calm and deadly precision that I knew he had been waiting for this moment. Mrs. Parker, he began in an even, professional voice, but with enough sarcasm for everyone to know he was about to tear her testimony to shreds like a bear with a picnic basket. Monica shifted in her chair, trying to maintain her fragile image of a wounded woman. James took a casual step forward. Earlier, you stated that you believe reconciliation is possible. Is that correct? She nodded. Yes. James tilted his head. And yet, in Dr. Carr's very detailed report, there is no mention of you taking responsibility for your actions. Would you like to explain? Monica blinked. I took responsibility. James raised an eyebrow. Oh? Because I read that you repeatedly recharacterized your actions as mistakes rather than choices, which is interesting considering that you didn't accidentally have an affair, right? Monica swallowed. It was a mistake. James smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Sure, a mistake. Just an accidental oversight. I smirked. James continued, leafing through his very neat and very dangerous folder. Let's talk about your relationship with Mr. Richard Sullivan, or as we all affectionately call him, Big Rick. Monica blushed. That has nothing to do with this. James feigned puzzlement. Oh, but I think it is. You see, Mrs. Parker, you've spent the last hour painting my client as an emotionally unavailable monster. But I'm curious. How can you go back to your husband when you're having a full-blown affair with your next-door neighbor? Monica shifted in her chair. I was unhappy. James nodded. And instead of talking about it, instead of going to therapy before you started an affair, instead of, I don't know, doing something else, you decided that the best way to deal with it was to cheat on your husband. Monica's lawyer objected. That's a moot point. The judge waved him off. Overruled. I want to hear the answer. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Monica lowered her eyes, pretending to be vulnerable. I wasn't thinking clearly. James smirked. Right. So you're saying your ability to think clearly only manifested itself after you were caught? I coughed, covering my mouth with my hand. It was perfect. Monica clenched her jaw. That's not fair. James continued, You believe my client deserves financial punishment because you didn't think clearly? Monica straightened up, regaining her confidence. I believe I deserve some compensation for the life I helped build. James nodded. Interesting. You say you helped build that life, but my client, and I have bank statements to prove it, was the primary breadwinner in the family. Monica pressed her lips together. I contributed. James raised the folder. Mrs. Parker, can you tell the court how many years you contributed financially to the family before you decided to quit your job? Monica opened her mouth but closed it. James tilted his head. Would you like me to say it for you? Monica turned away. 2 years? James smiled. 2. And you believe that entitles you to lifelong financial support? Monica faltered. I was the mother of his children. James nodded. And Mr. Parker was the father of those same children. Should he receive money for not cheating? Monica's lawyer objected. You're cross-examining the witness. The judge sighed, rubbing his temple. Overruled. Continue, Mr. Pearson. James nodded. I'd be delighted. He closed the folder and turned to the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. Monica exhaled visibly, as if she had barely survived. I leaned over to James and smiled. That was beautiful. James smiled back. We're not done yet. The judge looked at me. Mr. Parker, please take the witness stand. I stood up, adjusted my tie, and walked over to the witness stand. Monica looked nervous, and with good reason. War in the courtroom. Travis's testimony. I adjusted my tie as I sat down in the witness box and mentally prepared myself for what was about to happen in court. I had already been through therapy, endless meetings with lawyers, and Monica's attempts to rewrite history, so what else could there be? James stood up, adjusted his suit as if he were about to deliver the closing argument in a murder trial. Mr. Parker, he began, let's talk about your experience with marriage counseling. I sighed dramatically. Oh, is that necessary? James grinned. I'm afraid so. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, Mrs. Parker has submitted a report from Dr. Willow Carr stating that my client is not emotionally ready to work on reconciliation. I snorted. That's the understatement of the century. The judge shot me a look. James suppressed a smile and continued. Mr. Parker, what is your experience with therapy sessions? I leaned forward. Imagine you're at a seminar on manipulation, but you're the only participant. There was a pause, and the judge exhaled through his nose, clearly regretting his life choices. James nodded. Can you elaborate? Oh, sure. I pointed to Monica, who was trying her best to look like a sad Victorian widow. I went to these sessions thinking that maybe we would talk for real. Maybe we would work through our issues. Instead, every week, I listened to an hour-long performance about how she still loves me, and this shouldn't have happened. James nodded. And how did Dr. Carr react? I shrugged. Oh, she was very supportive of her. I mean, she was completely on Monica's side and treated me like some kind of evil caveman incapable of self-analysis. James walked over to the judge's bench, holding a thick folder in his hands. Your Honor, this is Dr. Carr's report. I would like to read a few excerpts. The judge sighed. Go ahead. James leafed through the report and read aloud. Mr. Parker demonstrated constant sarcasm, emotional detachment, and unwillingness to compromise. His dismissive attitude created an emotionally unsafe environment for Mrs. Parker. James turned to me. Mr. Parker, do you remember being sarcastic? I grinned. Oh, sure, but in my defense, it was self-defense. Several people in the courtroom laughed. The judge did not laugh. James smiled but kept his professional tone. And why did you feel the need to use sarcasm? I replied with an unruffled expression, because if I hadn't, I would have started throwing furniture. Monica's lawyer immediately stood up. "Objection!" James raised his hands. "Just kidding." He turned to me. "Mr. Parker, can you explain what you mean?" I sighed. "I mean that these sessions were rigged. Willow wasn't impartial. She had already decided I was a villain before we even started talking." James nodded. "How do you know that?" I grinned. "Because she told me." Monica shifted uncomfortably. James raised an eyebrow. "Elaborate." "Oh, I'd be delighted." I turned to the judge. "Your Honor, my therapist projected her failed marriage onto me." Monica's lawyer stood up again. "Objection. Conjecture." James objected. "Your Honor, if you'll allow me, Dr. Carr admitted this during the session." The judge turned to me. "Explain." I smiled. "Oh, it was a funny moment. Willow lost her composure and said I was just like her husband." The judge actually looked slightly interested. "And what was her tone?" "Oh, unflattering, I assure you." I leaned back in my chair. That's when I realized she wasn't really trying to help me. She was punishing me, and probably every other man who came into her office. James turned another page. "However, there is no mention of this in Dr. Carr's report." I snorted contemptuously. "Oh, what a surprise." James turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I believe that Dr. Carr's testimony and conclusions are biased, incomplete, and irrelevant to this case." Monica's lawyer immediately stood up. "Your Honor, this is a diversionary tactic. The fact remains that Mr. Parker was hostile, did not lift a finger, and made no emotional effort toward reconciliation." James looked at me. "Mr. Parker, do you believe you were given a fair chance at therapy?" I laughed out loud. Then I turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I have a better chance of getting therapy with a magic ball." The courtroom erupted in laughter again, and even the judge hid a smile. James sat down, satisfied. "No further questions." Monica's lawyer stood up, adjusted his tie, and walked over to me. "Mr. Parker," he said in a steady voice, "let's talk about your anger issues." I sighed to myself. Here we go. Battle in the courtroom. Travis's cross-examination. Monica's lawyer stood up, adjusted his expensive suit, and straightened his tie with such a smug smile that I knew he thought he was about to crush me. "Mr. Parker," he began in a sweet voice, "we've heard a lot today about your experiences in therapy. But let's shift the focus, shall we? Let's talk about your character." I sighed dramatically. "Oh, sure. Let's do that." His lips twitched as if he wanted to smile, but at the same time wanted to stab me with a knife. "Do you consider yourself a malicious person?" I tilted my head. "Define evil. If you mean a normal person who gets upset when his wife cheats on him with a man who refers to himself in the third person, then yes." Someone in the courtroom giggled. The judge shot a warning glance. Monica's lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, I would like to remind the witness that this is a serious proceeding." I grinned. "Oh, believe me, I take this very seriously. If I didn't, I would have staged a puppet show to reenact what actually happened in the sessions." The judge rubbed his temples. "Mr. Parker," Monica's lawyer continued, clearly trying to regain control of the situation, "Dr. Carr's report states that you were sarcastic, dismissive, and uncooperative. Would you agree that this is an accurate description?" I pretended to think. I don't know. I was pretty candid about how ridiculous the sessions were. As for sarcasm, well, I shrugged. I prefer to think of it as creative honesty. His jaw tightened. "Would you agree that your hostility in therapy was indicative of a pattern of behavior that contributed to the breakdown of your marriage?" I raised an eyebrow. "Wait, let me get this straight. You're saying that my bad behavior in therapy after I cheated is proof that my marriage was doomed?" He smiled as if he had cornered me. You seem to be very quick to place all the blame on Mrs. Parker. Do you really believe that you played no role in the breakdown of your marriage? I exhaled slowly, leaned forward slightly, and met his gaze. You know, I've thought about this for months. What could I have done differently? Could I have been more attentive? A better communicator? And the answer is maybe. But here's what I know for sure. None of that would have stopped her from cheating on me. Monica shifted uncomfortably. Monica's lawyer, clearly annoyed, flipped through his notes. Let's talk about your children. Beth, in particular. During the trial, you were granted temporary custody. However, Mrs. Parker has expressed a strong desire to share custody. I nodded. Yes. Beth also expressed a strong desire to have her mother out of her life, so you see, the interests are conflicting. His smile was strained. So you admit that you actively influenced your daughter's opinion of her mother? I pretended to gasp. Oh no, you got me. I secretly ran a smear campaign handing out flyers against Monica at PTA meetings. I crossed my arms. Beth is 16 years old. She has eyes and ears and a brain. She watched all of this just as I did. Monica's lawyer glanced at her, probably hoping for some signal to continue the pressure. Monica looked down at her knees. Smart move. Your Honor, he said, turning to the judge, given that custody disputes often involve the wishes of the child, I request that Beth Parker be allowed to speak for herself. I felt my stomach tighten slightly. Beth was strong, but I hated putting her in this position. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked at me. Mr. Parker, do you have any objections? I exhaled and shook my head. And just like that, Beth was about to take the stand. Battle in the courtroom. Beth takes the stand. I had gone through months of pointless manipulation, therapy, legal maneuvers, and emotional turmoil that would have been enough for a lawsuit, but nothing made my stomach clench like the sight of my daughter walking up to the witness stand. Beth was strong, quick-witted, and too smart for her age, but she was still 16. I hated that she had to do this. She sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and met the judge's gaze with a steady, unwavering stare. No sarcasm, no games, just Beth, ready to speak her mind. The judge nodded slightly. Miss Parker, thank you for coming today. I want to ask you a few questions about your life and your relationship with your parents. Do you understand? Beth nodded. Yes, sir. Monica's lawyer stood up, trying to sound warm and understanding. Beth, I know this is difficult for you. Can you tell us about your relationship with your mother? Beth exhaled through her nose. Before or after she cheated? Monica tensed. The lawyer's jaw twitched, but he kept his voice even. Let's start with what came before that. Beth shifted slightly in her chair. She was my mom. She drove me to school, made sure I did my homework, made me eat my vegetables. We weren't best friends or anything, but she was there. Monica looked hopeful. Maybe things weren't as bad as she thought. The lawyer smiled. And after that? Beth's face hardened. After that, everything changed. She turned slightly toward Monica, but didn't look at her. She was the only person who was supposed to be on our side, but she lied. She abandoned our family as if we didn't matter. Her voice faltered just for a second. And then she wanted us to pretend everything was fine. Monica's eyes flashed. Beth, that's not fair. Beth turned sharply toward her. Unfair? She let out a short, bitter laugh. Mom, I was 14. You didn't just cheat on Dad, you cheated on all of us. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. Even Monica's lawyer hesitated before continuing. Beth, I understand that you're hurting, but you miss your mother, don't you? Beth swallowed and looked down at her hands. I miss the mother I thought I had. She looked up, and this time her voice didn't waver. Not the one who made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Monica flinched, as if Beth had hit her. The lawyer cleared his throat. Beth, do you think completely cutting your mother out of your life is a reasonable decision? Beth's expression hardened. Was betraying my father a reasonable decision? There was a sharp gasp somewhere in the courtroom. The lawyer glanced quickly at the judge, hoping for an objection, but the judge only sighed and motioned for him to continue. Beth, he repeated, do you think you and your mother have a chance at reconciliation? Beth exhaled slowly. Ask me again when she stops pretending it's not her fault. The lawyer was at a loss. He turned to the judge. No further questions. Beth stepped down from the stand, walked over to the table, and sat down next to me, not looking at Monica. I leaned toward her and whispered, "Are you okay?" She nodded but didn't smile. Yes. The battle in court. The judge's decision. The courtroom was silent. You could hear a pin drop, or in my case, my soul vibrating with joy, which I was struggling to contain. The judge leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and looked completely exhausted after the circus performance he had just presided over. He cleared his throat, looked at me, at Monica, and at the courtroom full of people who had just witnessed Beth break her mother with words. I've heard enough, he finally said. Oh, thank God. The judge adjusted his glasses and turned to Monica's lawyer. Counsel, after reviewing the evidence, the testimony, and frankly, the absurdity of everything I've just heard, I see no grounds for changing the original divorce decree. I almost raised my fist in victory in open court. Monica, on the other hand, looked as if she had just been personally insulted by reality. The judge continued, leafing through his notes. It is clear to me that Mrs. Parker had ample opportunity to negotiate the terms prior to this hearing, but she chose not to do so. The argument that she was emotionally coerced into signing the original agreement is without merit. Monica's lawyer fidgeted nervously but said nothing. I couldn't help myself. I leaned over to James and whispered, "Should I send flowers or just a thank you card to the judge's chambers?" James grinned. Just shut up and let it play out. The judge continued. Furthermore, the testimony, especially that of Miss Parker, has clearly shown that there are no reasonable grounds to expect an agreement on joint custody. Beth was casually scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious to what was happening. I'm almost certain she was sending Tracy the latest news in real time. The judge sighed deeply, rubbing his temple as if he were about to be sent into retirement in a matter of seconds. Mrs. Parker, I understand your disappointment with the terms, but you made your choice and that choice has consequences. I see no legal basis for awarding additional child support or revising the custody agreement. Monica clenched her jaw, her fingers digging into the table as if she were struggling to keep herself from throwing something. I sat with my hands folded neatly, looking like the picture of inner calm. The judge looked at both sides. Does anyone have any final comments before I close the hearing? James nudged me under the table, and I knew what that meant. Don't say anything stupid, Travis. Instead of following through with my original idea of pulling out an air horn to celebrate our victory, I simply shook my head. No, Your Honor, James replied evenly. Monica's lawyer looked at her, probably hoping for a reasonable response. Big mistake. Monica stood up abruptly. This is unfair, she blurted out, her voice on the verge of hysterics. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Parker, he gets to walk away with everything, and I'm left with nothing, she continued, her voice so shrill it seemed to shatter the glass. I muttered under my breath, You're walking away with Big Rick. That's something. James pinched his nose, probably regretting every decision in his life that had led him to become my lawyer. The judge's patience was wearing thin. Mrs. Parker, sit down. Now. Monica snorted loudly and threw herself into her chair like a teenager whose mother had forbidden her to go to the mall. The judge exhaled a final breath of exhaustion. In conclusion, the original divorce agreement stands. Case dismissed. The gavel struck the table. Boom! That was it. The end. I exhaled slowly, then turned to James. So how does victory taste? He grinned. Yeah, expensive. I grinned back. Worth every penny. As we stood up, Beth leaned toward me. Dad, can we stop for ice cream on the way home? You know, to celebrate. I smiled. Sure we can. Monica rushed past me, muttering curses under her breath. I nodded politely to her. Hey, good game. She gave me the middle finger. James sighed. Let's go before you say something you'll get yourself in trouble for. And that's how I walked out of the courtroom a free man.